With the current state of social media and its short-form content, many have experienced depleting attention spans and becoming addicted to the short videos on their phone. I myself am a victim of this formula to keep users using. I chose to research this further in order to become more conscious of how a short attention span can influence my music consumption and the choices I may unwillingly make. The insights I gained spread much further than personal consumption and are thus worth sharing as my final project for musicology. To begin, I sought out an explanation of why short-form content has taken over and why it works. Back in 1971, Simon Herbert took notice of our world being brimmed with information and asks what this, quote, wealth of information, unquote, takes the place of. Knowing that information consumes the, quote, attention of its recipients, unquote, he concludes that, quote, a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention and a need to allocate that attention efficiently among the overabundance of information sources that might consume it, end quote. What I find most interesting about this is his idea that our attention needs to be distributed efficiently among the many sources of information that it could go to. This concept is what big tech companies today have exploited and thus created what is called the attention economy. To define what the attention economy is, Chantal Carpenter, in a proposition to change it, describes how the attention economy functions in her article called Attention Economy. She writes, quote, on the social side, the erosion of individuals' control of their own personal data has a profound effect on the human psyche, influencing people's beliefs, how they relate to the physical world, and creating a sense of information overload. The way data are currently valued in these markets creates a race to grab individuals' attention at the lowest possible cost. End quote. Carpenter continues with an explanation of how big tech companies are exploiting the allocation of our attention and how this has a negative effect on our mental health, as well as coming at the expense of individuals' well-being and even affecting individuals' intentions. The Berkeley Economic Review poses an example of such a company that exploits this. Quote, music streaming services like Spotify have two revenue streams. You can either monetarily pay for ads to disappear or pay with your attention and listen to ads, end quote. This is a new concept, to pay with your attention. Although we always say pay attention, it's never actually seen as a currency. However, in the attention economy, that is your currency. It's your attention, it's your time, and now it's also your mental health. So how are these factors affecting our own music consumption? Today, streaming is the most popular way to listen to music. Music streaming services such as Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music have a wealth of information on their apps. New music is being released constantly every day, and they often have what's called a For You tab that recommends music to you based off what you're listening to recently. This includes recent, old, and new releases, and this wealth of information does have an effect on music streaming services users. From the Stereo Fox music blog, music consumer Lou writes about how today albums are rarely listened to in full. He says, quote, music continuously consumed through the filter of a short attention span has amplified the notion of albums being forgettable. And you know what exacerbates that? A wealth of information. And in this case, I'm talking about the wave of new music that compels us to move on ever so quickly, end quote. Author Lou poses the bombardment of new music that hits recommendation pages, social media, and streaming services as the culprit of why albums are not fully listened to these days. This new music becomes an escape out of the commitment of listening to a full album or listening to any amount of songs on an album. Instead, consumers just listen to one song and end up skipping to a different song on a different album, different artist, etc. Instead of saying that this album format is dead, Lou cites how artists have begun to conform to the shortening of attention spans with their album releases. He cites artists such as Kanye West and Drake who have released albums that are formatted as playlists and works in progress. He also cites the popular album format in recent years, which is to release it in chunks. This means releasing 1 to 2 songs from the same album periodically over a long period of time. Lou says that this, quote, helps artists grab listeners' much divided attention, end quote, which cites the divided attention that needs allocation, just as Simon Herbert previously explained. However, the problem grows deeper. Music consumers aren't listening to not only full albums, but also full songs. Lou cites the example of when Playboi Carti, a rap artist, released a new album Christmas Day of 2021 and was met with strongly negative opinions. However, these comments on the 62-minute-long album came just 30 minutes after its release. So obviously, the album's consumers are not listening to the full album, but also it's not its full songs either. As I said before, the wave of new music that comes on social media and recommendation pages on streaming services becomes an escape to not listen to a full song and instead find something that is instantly gratifying, a technique learned through short-form content. Users are able to simply skip a video if they aren't enjoying it without any repercussions. Author Lisa Urkovich writes about how the music industry has adhered to this technique in her article called Our Rebirth: Shaping the Music Discipline After the COVID-19 Pandemic. Urkovich cites the quote, track and hook formula for writing songs in the modern age. This formula is where producers build digital grooves and then send these grooves out to songwriters. Whoever creates the best, most catchy melody from the submissions continues working on that song. It is the analogy of a hook grabbing onto the music consumer that is so important here. Urkovich writes, this track and hook process does not lend itself very well to art. Yet it is this formulaic product that has been shaping the musical tastes of worldwide citizens for decades, and consequently making it more difficult for musicians who are engaged in originality, artistry, technical skillfulness, regional or heritage traditions to gain a professional foothold." End quote. Urkovich cites how it is more difficult for original artists to make their way into the music industry these days. That with the continuation of waves of new music coming out each day on streaming services, it's very hard for music consumers to find these original artists, as well as listen to them fully, as I mentioned before. To find out more about how this predicament is affecting songwriters, I enlisted the help of Quinn Olson, a contemporary songwriter here at Frost. I interviewed Quinn Olson regarding the relationship between attention spans and her music production. As someone who produces music, how often do you consider the attention spans of your listeners?
As a songwriter, I really think about it all the time because it's so important to me that people pay attention and listen to my whole song and get the message that I'm trying to come across. For example, I just recently wrote a song for my ensemble that has a double verse before the chorus, and I was really concerned, and I've had many conversations with my teacher about if it gets to the point fast enough and if people will stop listening or not be as interested. And he told me that there's no problem with it and that I should focus more on how I want it to sound rather than other people. But I do really consider it all the time.
Do you think that the changes that you make in consideration of attention spans affects the song itself and your vision of the song?
Because I'm more of a pop writer and I'm trying to become a songwriter for the greater public, I think it improves the quality of my work because it makes me really consider what is good and what is worthy of people hearing.
So in the future, how do you think producers should approach the consideration of attention spans? Should they adhere to it, ignore it, challenge it?
Well, I think generally it should be challenged. I think that a lot of art and a lot of worthy stuff can get destroyed in the process of adhering to a huge audience. Again, it depends on the intention, like I talked about. Like, since I'm working more on popular music, it's a bigger deal, but I think that when the intention is to create something artistic and creative and really beautiful, I don't think it should be considered as much, because you should say what you want to say and the way you want to say it.
In order to illustrate Quinn Olson's point of how songwriters are adhering to shorter attention spans, I've decided to analyze the song Espresso, written by Sabrina Carpenter. Espresso, released in 2024, boasts 1.6 billion streams on Spotify and was immensely popular on TikTok. Espresso is 2 minutes and 55 seconds total and includes a 9-second intro, a 21-second chorus which is played 4 times, and the song is at a constant tempo of 104 beats per minute. It should be noted that directly after the 9-second intro is the chorus. It is this chorus, which is catchy and repetitive, that made Espresso the perfect target for a TikTok sound. Users posted dances to the chorus, spreading the song quickly and enabling viewers to go listen to the song. The choice to have such a short intro and the most popular portion of the song, the chorus, directly after, makes Espresso easy to listen to with low commitment, especially less commitment than listening to a full album. The chorus also takes up almost half of the already short song, making it easily digestible for listeners. Espresso is the perfect example of a songwriter adhering to short attention spans and thus creating a hit. However, as cited before, Lisa Urkovich writes how this formula isn't easily accessible for songwriters in minority genres with minority influences. On the other hand, as Quinn Olson was saying, it is beneficial for all songwriters of all genres to take notice of the efficiency of this formula. Messages in songs can be communicated much quicker and therefore more accessibly. However, it is ultimately the intention of the artist of whether this formula helps or hinders their message. In conclusion, it is the attention economy that we live in that forces music consumers and songwriters into these formulas that, although are efficient and well managed, defeat a key aspect of art: patience. Patience creates suspension, outside connections, and satisfaction, all of which songs like Espresso lack. Artists can continue to learn from the formula's organization and ingenuity, but shouldn't hinder the musical aspects of their message for more views. Such a process could continue to add to the music industry's overall saturation. I hope this exploration has given insight into your own music consumption and serve as a reminder to stay patient while listening to music. You might find what you're looking for.